All right, Hufsa, thanks so much for
Oh,
being
it's
on the
Hafsa. Oh,
Oh, thanks so much, Hafsa. Thanks for being on the podcast today. First question that I have for you is tell the audience a little bit about you and how you started.
okay. Let's see. I always get this question. I should have this like my elevator pitch off the bat, but my name is Hafsa. I am a nerd. I live with mental illness, and ADHD. I live with bipolar disorder, ADHD, and anxiety. Probably some other stuff too. I also thought I had chronic pain, but it looks like it's not going to be chronic. And I'm a very strong mental health advocate. I'm a licensed therapist. I used to be an engineer. I went to this nerd school called Harvey Mudd, and I am a very big disability advocate as well. I was on the board for the Dale McIntosh Center for the Disabled as vice president. And it's really a big passion of mine to make the world more accessible for all folks, all people of all different types of backgrounds. I think we need to build a world with more empathy and understanding. And I think that's how things start to get a lot more accessible.
Mm-hmm. And so what do you do nowadays? I know that you're like a speaker and then you do a bunch of different things, but could you dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I should probably do less things, but a TLDR is I'm a licensed psychotherapist. I focus on helping with serious mental illness and addiction and trauma. So that's number one. The next thing I do is I do keynote speaking and training. So I've done two TEDx talks. One went viral, and that's a big important thing for me to really spread the message and smash the stigma. Stigma smash is my key phrase. So everyone use hashtag stigma smash on every post. I don't care if it's a post about what you ate for breakfast or taking a picture of your dinner. I don't care. Stigma smash. And I also do behavioral health consulting with organizations to make things more like better for mental health and wellness and more accessible. And let's see, I do stand-up comedy. Yeah, I do stand-up comedy. And I don't know. I play a lot of pickleball. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a lot of stuff. That's a lot of hats to juggle.
Oh
So,
yeah.
let's get into the psychotherapist part of it first. What do you sort of do on that front?
So psychotherapy for me, I've been in the field for 12 years. I've been doing therapy for several years. And what I like to do is be very recovery focused, strengths based, client centered, and collaborative. So what that means is I'm not here to tell someone what to do. I'm not here to be better than anyone or superior or have power. What I'm here to do is help facilitate change and hopefully get people to the point where they don't need to see me anymore, or at least not often. Because I tell people, go spend your time and money elsewhere. Like, just, I'm gonna help you. We're gonna get the job done, but I really think you should go to Seattle, which is interesting that your background's Seattle, because I tell people, go to Seattle, go to New York, just get out of my office, which I mean in the nicest way. Also, I'm virtual, so I'm not really kicking anyone out. But I do focus a lot on the mental illnesses, bipolar disorder, major depression, schizophrenia, schizoaffective, anxiety, PTSD, and addictions, which come in many, many different forms. So that's something that I do help with. And then, um, yeah, I really try to be as humble as possible because, of course, I think people know a lot of the answers, but if they don't, they just need a little bit of guidance. And
Mm-hmm.
as for modalities, I'm very big on EMDR, which is a trauma therapy, very effective in the short term, typically, and dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, which is just like two thumbs up. I went through a DBT program myself, just phenomenally helpful, life changing.
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about your role as a public speaker. What does that entail?
Let's say I like to talk to people and educate them and make them laugh. That's basically what I do. The more focused speeches I do, it's a lot of stigma smashing, a lot of awareness about the different types of mental health. I do help with workplaces to make their workplaces more healthy and open and accessible. Um, I did a virtual speech for this tech company many years ago, and the HR director just said everyone was talking to each other more. It's just helpful for me as an HR director to understand, and it built a culture of compassion. And then my stand-up comedy, I like to make a lot of jokes about the ridiculous nature of receiving my own treatment and also being in this field. So I don't know, I could give you an example if you want.
Yeah, like, cause that was my next question. How did you get into stand-up comedy?
Oh my God, it's so funny. Okay, so everyone asked me that, and like, I'm a lot more open about it before. It's like, but 10 years ago, I had a therapist, a psychologist I went to for depression and bipolar disorder. And she told me to do stand-up comedy. And no one in my life had ever told me to do that. I don't think people thought I was funny. They said I said funny things, but not necessarily jokes. I can tell jokes now, but it was such a bizarre thing, and I was like, why would you say that? And she's like, well, you're funny. And I'm like, I'm talking about my mental health, and I thought I came here for you to help me with my delusions, not make new ones. And she laughed and she's like, see, you're so funny. But she did say it was a way to smash stigma and reach audiences otherwise. And a lot of my stand-up comedy did have to do with being Muslim, because in 2016 there was like a lot of hate crimes towards Muslims. Um, for a reason I'm not going to say. But yeah, it's like it's interesting, and I started to do it and I did well, but like 2 years later, I think I went to a psychiatrist for depression because stand-up comedy didn't make it go away. And he said, you can't be depressed. You're a stand-up comedian. And I was like, this is so ironic, It was prescribed to me, and now it didn't work, but they're saying I don't need it. And also, it's like, I don't know, Laszlo, if you know any stand-up comedians, but they're the most depressed people ever. I
I
was
did
like,
not know that.
oh, really? Yeah, no, no, no. Like stand-up comedians, because I mean, some of them have taken their life. Like we know about Robin Williams. There was this guy, Brody Stevens. He's more well known in LA area, but it's just a lot of times people they say comedy is tragedy plus time. So
Mhm.
people would, go to their mics to process trauma. It's just a lot of people that have used dark humor to survive and be resilient, but that still means that a lot of them are suffering. And I've had, even close friends end up taking their lives or overdosing, and it's like, it was just such a ridiculous point because it was so out of touch for the psychiatrist in so many ways to be like, oh, you do this, therefore you're not depressed. Therefore, I'm ignoring what you're telling me and your symptoms because you're a stand-up comic. So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm glad that you mentioned Robin Williams because I think he was sort of the pillar about stand-up comedy. He would do all these sorts of bits. He would do all these sorts of micro impressions. He would, be very versatile in his comedic approach. So what I'm asking is, in your stand-up comedy, who was sort of your admire? Who did you look up to? Because there are many people that on the stand-up comedy universe, but what was it like for you? Who was that one person that you're like, I want to do what he or she is doing one day?
Um, let's see. I'll say there's like three. One was like Russell Peters. I don't really endorse his comedy, especially his latest stuff. But this was 20 something years ago. It was the first stand-up comedian that we saw. This was how old are you, Laszlo?
I'm 27, about to be 28. Gosh. Yeah.
Okay. So you're like approximately 10 years younger than me. So you would have been 5 years old when Russell Peters stand-up came out. So you wouldn't have been watching that. And then now it's a bit, I don't encourage people to watch it unless they want to. It's not my business. But anyway, he was Indian and he was making all these jokes, and it was the first time that it was a non-white male that was doing it. And then there were two Muslim women like that I both found on YouTube that were so funny. And I thought, oh, I can do this too. So those people really lit the way, the ones that I related to. And now if you go on Instagram, there's comedians of all shapes, sizes, races, ages, names, whatever, genders, gender identity. And it just everyone's doing stand-up comedy. It's accessible to everyone now. So yeah.
Hmm. So what I was going to ask is, in your stand-up comedy routine, what sorts of material do you focus on? Do you focus on aspects of your own experience, or what does that sort of look like?
Yeah. So I try to, if I were to write it out, I'd say slice of life, which means I talk about my life essentially. Because it just seems to make sense that a lot of things in my life are super ironic, like I I'm Muslim, right? My parents are conservative Muslims. And then my partner, he is a Mexican atheist. And my parents do love him, but it's talking about those interesting um kind of like quirks in my life. And I talk about being Muslim and having mental illness, mental health condition, because it's just like an interesting intersection. So I spent a lot of time talking about that. I do have some observational comedies. So one joke that I just started working on was that there's three groups where I don't know where they learned to talk like that. Like newscasters, like where did they learn to talk like so like like this 6 p.m. news, we're gonna talk about this explosion coming. Like it's just where did you learn to talk like that? Who said that's how you talk? The second one are pilots, like just like like no one knows what they're saying. Like the technology for airplanes has increased like every year, right? But they have not upgraded the microphone for the pilot unless he's purposely saying things in a way that no one knows what he's talking about. And the third one is therapists. Where did therapists learn to be like, ah, yes, tell me more. That's interesting. Yeah, it was just like, where do these people like collectively decide that's how you talk, So that's just something that I just started working on because it's just, stuff's weird. And it's all clean, family friendly, ish, but all clean. I say PG-13, no swearing. There is one time I say the B word, but it's so worth it. It's so worth it, that it's like, okay, that's my one swear word in my entire 10 years.
Hmm. And like, what have you learned in doing work not just as a psychotherapist, as a keynote speaker, but also as a stand-up comedian? What have you learned in doing all those things? Because again, you have all different types of hats. So,
Yeah. So it's really what I learned is that laughter is the universal language. Like humor is what connects people that would never be connected otherwise. So I always talk about how my ability to make jokes got me back into the country because I went to Costa Rica and then somehow my flight was delayed. So I'm trying to come back to America, but I only have or California, I only have 30 minutes to get from one side of the airport to another. So when we're getting off the airplane, right? Like there's a huge line of people waiting, and I was trying to get through, and I'm getting through and getting through. And I'm like, oh, excuse me, like my plane's gonna leave, I need to go. And this couple just stops and they're like, well, we need to go too. And I mean, the logical answer is, well, why don't you come with me? But I didn't think of that at the time. I was just like, oh my God. And so I don't know what happened, but at some point I make a joke, not even intentional. I think I was just rambling to myself, and they laugh and then they say, you can go. So it's just, there's something about humor that lowers defenses. Like I use it in sessions. I'm not saying I do stand-up comedy in sessions. But if someone asked me to and it was clinically relevant, I don't see why not. But you know, like I use it in sessions, I use it in keynotes. Especially if you start off with a laugh, people are ready to listen. And when I talk about heavy topics, like, suicide or unaliving or taking someone's life, like that's a heavy topic that you do want to have balance. And then yeah, I think it's just I do this I perform with this group called Comedy for Peace. So it's Jews, Muslims, Christians all giving like a comedy show together. And the slogan is no politics, just laughs. That it's just we're just gonna set aside everything and joke about ourselves. And all of us just joke about ourselves. And it's just a really wonderful way to unite people.
Yeah, that's kind of something similar to what Byron Allen's show did, Comics Unleashed, where it's just like no politics. We're just in here on a couch, sitting, having good laughs.
Hmm. Exactly. And I love that because I think comedians ruined comedy in a way. Like when people think of comedy, they think of Joe Rogan and Kill Tony and just people that I wish didn't have such a large platform. I mean, not saying they shouldn't have it. I'm just saying I wish I didn't have to hear their names and be associated because people are like, don't post you're a comedian on LinkedIn. It's unprofessional. And it's like, yes, there's validity. If someone thinks I'm a comedian like Joe Rogan, that would be miserable. But also, I feel like if someone looks at me, they're not gonna, you know, think I say horrible things. Like I think I have a little wall, but it really comedy's I think beautiful. Comedy's a way to really just put aside the stress, reduce it. Like there's so many benefits to humor and dark humor, making jokes about your situation that it's like um it's
Hmm.
so good and I hate that it's being ruined and tainted.
Yeah, because what I was gonna ask is like stand-up comedies used to be a format where people would laugh at like anything, but now it's kind of like, people are putting, current events or like controversial topics. So you as a stand-up comedian, how do you sort of dance around, like toe the line of like, I have to talk about this important issue, but also not offend people?
Yeah, I think there's like two things that there's general rules. I don't punch down. I don't even feel like I punch up anymore because it's isn't necessary unless it's funny. I can't think of a joke off the top of my head where I'm punching up, and I know I don't have anywhere I'm punching down. I'm typically punching myself in the gut, with laughter. And so I think if we're coming from a genuine perspective where we're not putting down or using words that I don't even want to say at any point in my life, like I don't even say those words, I say letter word. It's just that's my philosophy, and I think the best comedians are the ones that don't have to put down, you know, people who are disadvantaged or something like that, just people that are constantly have been bullied their whole lives and put down by society. I think that's not something I want to do. And so I think coming from a genuine angle, I think I have offended people. I think, of course, that's inevitable when I make a joke. Like I remember on Facebook, this was, I don't know, a year ago. So for context, when I had my gallbladder removed, I couldn't eat chips or like soda or anything like that. And so I finally had chips 2 years later and I finished the whole bag. And I had YouTube, it popped up that, oh, they actually engineer chips to be addictive. So I just posted casually on Facebook, not even a joke. Like, isn't it weird that we engineered food to be so addictive, and now we have to take Ozempic to fight this addiction or something like that, cravings or something. I don't remember. It was just really not that deep. It was just like, oh my God. And this person got really mad. And she hired me for a speech where I got a standing ovation, but she was so mad. She's like, my daughters needed Ozempic. They weren't addicted to food, blah, 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 blah. Like, don't be so quick to judge. And so I spent 30 minutes drafting a very kind reply, like, oh, this had nothing to do with that. I just happened to eat some chips and I was blown away by what happened. No, nothing, blah, blah, blah. I didn't mean anything. And then she replies with, like, yeah, that explanation was needed, Hufsa. And then she repeated it. And I got so mad. I was just like, okay, I probably didn't need to, I didn't technically apologize, but, in a way that I'm trying to be considerate. I technically probably didn't even need to do that. I just wanted to show compassion. And then it was put back on me that, oh, I did something wrong. And it was very infuriating because it's like, I'm not a bad person. So at the end of the day, especially if it's written, it's so easy to confuse. And especially like, if someone just kind of doesn't think and just goes by their reaction, it can often offend. But I definitely have offended people in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And like I try to make do and apologize because that's not what I try to do. But at the end of the day, people can be offended by things I say for sure.
Mm-hmm. That place that you said that where you guys do sort of stand-up comedy but without sort of hitting controversial topics. Did you meet people there or like fellow stand-up comedians or what was that like?
Yeah, so I was asked to join that someone had heard of me. Um they call him Eric Angel. Um and so he was looking for like a female Muslim comedian that was clean. And he had heard of me and reached out, and so of course I was willing to do it. I met very, very, very phenomenal headlining comedians. Like I met people that were just so funny, and I mean a lot of them are like my close friends that have been really supportive. And I think that's really the beautiful thing is I met so many friends, and after the show people will come talk to me. And what's interesting about our show is that we have a Q&A afterwards. So audience ask us questions and then I get to talk, and I think it's a more organic way for people to get to know me. And all of us, because they have questions. That's a beautiful thing that, when we're having these comedies we're sharing, like it starts to spark discussions. And it's never been negative. It's never been anger. It's never been offense. It's just consistently been like we really enjoyed this and we want to connect.
Hmm. And finally, how can, the experiences that you've had both as a psychotherapist, as a public speaker, and as a stand-up comedian, how can those experiences, inspire people or like not inspire people, but like get people to sort of um really be themselves or kind of I guess be themselves, learn more about stuff about your experiences and sort of connect their own experiences, like kind of relate on some level, but yeah.
Um, so if I'm understanding correctly, and cut me off if I'm not.
Okay.
One thing to know about me is that I was bullied very heavily in fifth and sixth grade. Like they had a slam book where people voted me as dumbest and ugliest girl in school. Like it was something where it was so devastating that I wanted to take my life, at age 10. And it was really a point where I was the other, but then I'd have periods where it's like I'm not the other. Like I'm the queen of nerds, I'm class president, I'm student body president, I'm very well liked, or I'm an other. And I think a lot of us, especially if we're, exceptional in some way, we have a disability, we're of a different ethnicity or gender identity. If we're exceptional in that regard, we're not the standard norm, we can get othered. And it's not fun. It's very hurtful. And even at a job I had, where I was the only person that was different than these other women of the same background. Like I got othered, I got talked badly about, and it hurts. And I think one thing I try to tell people is just I think it's important to be true to yourself and be kind. Especially kind to yourself and also kind to others. Like I simply can't adapt. I can't have a lower voice. I can't grow in height. I'm 5 feet tall. I can't change my ethnicity. I can't become like the norm. But what I can do is just embrace myself and be kind. And I think that's how I've connected with people. Even strangers will come talk to me. But we're exceptional in that regard. And then I mean that we're exceptional in that way too, because whenever we have our disabilities and our struggles, that gives us our strengths. That gives us the beautiful people that we are, because the ones who have suffered are phenomenal people across the board, everyone I've met, especially if someone has a disability. We've lived a different life, and that's something beautiful to embrace.
Yeah, it's this idea of being your true authentic self, right?
hmm And I think for society, we need to be more empathetic towards each other. Like for example, there's something called the attribution error, sometimes fundamental attribution, where say like I'm coming in late. People think, wow, she's irresponsible, she's bad. They don't know that like my cat's having seizures every morning. They don't know that I'm trying to care for this person. They don't know I'm on medicine that makes me sleepy. Um, and they're making that judgment, and it takes that time that once they know there's something deeper, that's where the judgment goes away. And I think we need to just cut out that judgment right there and start with empathy. Like, okay, she's late. What's going on with her? Like, let's check on her. And I
Yeah,
can't
is
say,
everything okay? That kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what can people do to like find more information about you or your work?
So I started a LinkedIn newsletter. So you can follow me on LinkedIn and probably subscribe to my newsletter. Though I don't know how. I'm sure you can figure out though. I also have an Instagram, YouTube, and I'm gonna start a Substack whenever I figure out how to do that. Can't be too hard. But I love to hear from people. You have my email, you can reach out. I'd love to hear from you. My website is elevatewithhufsa.com. And I'm here to connect. So yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Okie doke.